So this slide shows basically a CAD geometry and where we got the CAD geometry. So this geometry is the drive air model. It's from a university in Germany. They developed it. It was working with a few different German manufacturers, so it has different body structures mixed with different German cars. So you can see on the left is the top side of the car, and on the right is the bottom side of the car. This is the diffuser that we created. It's pretty basic, but this will show what a diffuser can do on a dirty underbody. This is the geometry, so these are the tunnels for the exhaust running through here, the tires, all of this. This is pretty standard. They have CFD data and wind tunnel data for this geometry, so it's a great thing to use as a test. And this is the actual data. So we used ANSYS Fluent as the solver. Also, the mesh was created in Fluent itself, and the post-processing was done in ParaView. So just off quality of the mesh, we have a max skewness of 0.86, which is pretty good, definitely for a geometry of this complexity. The average mesh was around 40 million cells, and we used Fluent's polyhex core mesh. And this is the data. We'll come back to the data after we kind of go over some of the slides. So this is after the analysis was done. This is where you can see a lot of differences on it. So obviously we're looking at the underbody of the car. Smooth only. It's right here. This is where the underbody is completely smooth. You can see the coloring is based on pressure coefficient. This is with the diffuser. And then the dirty ones are the more interesting ones. So you can see the dirty only and the diffuser. Point one, you can see where the high pressure is on the opposite on both sides. So you can see how basically the diffuser changes how the flow underneath the car acts. The area around the muffler is much lower pressure with the diffuser than without the diffuser, which can be seen on number 2. And then on number 3, you can see where the lower pressure is favored to different sides. On the diffuser, it's towards the bottom, and on the dirty, it's towards the top. And you can see it pointing at it with the laser. And then on the next slide, so this is also, we're looking at pressure coefficient, but this is also with basically the wall shear stress lines. So you can kind of see how the flow is acting on here. The smooth underbody, pretty normal, pretty clean flow going all the way underneath the car with the diffuser and without the diffuser. Now you look at the dirty one, it's a lot more complex, especially around these locations that I'm highlighting. You can see one big area, so you have a lot of people say, well, if you have the diffuser hanging down, it creates drag because you get a high pressure on that front section, which, yes, that is true. You do get a high pressure, as can be seen right here in number 1, but that doesn't necessarily mean overall it's going to hurt the performance. The region of high pressure is about the same in this area as it is with the dirty floor. The back is very interesting. So on the back side, on the left, you can see 0. So the gray coloring region is closer to ambient pressure, which on this, we're going to want more of that than the light blue or the dark blue, because the light or dark blue is actually going to be pulling the car rearward. So that is a function of drag. So where number 1 points out, you can kind of see how the gray is, and I'm outlining it. But then you go to the one with the diffuser, and you see it. So this is the big area that a lot of people don't think of when you talk about adding a diffuser. They think about just the underbody and just the drag on the underside, but the diffuser affects the flow in other areas of the car, specifically at the back end of the car. And you can also see it with the smooth underbody, how much it's also reduced compared to the smooth. It makes a big difference on the back end of the car. Now looking at the front, there's not really any changes that can be deciphered, but since we're showing different views, I want to go ahead and show like the front view You can see the high pressure on the front of the car, pretty standard. Lower pressure around the hood and the fenders, that's where velocity is increasing, and then you have a higher pressure again at the lower bottom part of the windshield, also very standard. That's why cars bring in air into the cab via around this area, because it's high pressure. All right, looking at the top, it's very similar. There is a little bit slight differences on the diffuser to the non-diffuser. So you can see basically the top view of the car is very similar. The dirty underbody models have more ambient pressure gray on the back of the glass. The side view, this is where the side view is kind of interesting. So when we were looking at the bottom side, you could see that with the diffuser and without the diffuser, it changed kind of the direction that the flow was going. One would go towards the left, the other would go towards the right, and you can see that on the side view, especially around the rear tires. So if you look right here, it's just mainly light blue, but then if you go over to this one, you have more purple, you have more dark blue, and less light blue. So you got lower pressure right here. Then we do the same on this back side. You can see very similar results on the smooth underbody. Go to the next side. Now it's the opposite. So this is the other side of the car. Now you have the opposite. So the dirty only, you have much more lower pressure on the rear tire than with the diffuser. And you can also see the similar trends with the smooth underbody. It's not as crazy as with the dirty underbody, but it still can be seen. Okay, so now let's go back to the data. So now that you saw the CFD post-processing pictures, it'll be more useful to then look at the data. We can see on here, so dirty floor only is the highest at 285.7. Now with the diffuser, we decrease that total drag to 259.5, which that's a pretty significant drop. Now we go to the smooth floor only, and that has 225.7 pounds drag. So it's even lower than the dirty floor with the diffuser, which this makes sense, especially looking at a lot of theoretical data that's out there on smooth underbodies and how much it reduces drag. This makes a lot of sense. Now go to smooth floor plus diffuser. The diffuser decreases drag even more, and this is where you're probably seeing on the back side of the car mainly. That's where that decrease is coming from, because we're not smoothing out the flow on the underside anymore. So when you add a diffuser to a smooth underbody, it's going to be more targeted towards the pressure on the back side of the car. You can go to total lift. So this is a normal car, so it's going to create lift from factory and not downforce. So the smaller the number would mean kind of more downforce in essence, but it's still going to be vertical lift. We want the number to be lower, and then if the number becomes negative on this, then you would have downforce. So the stock car, 143.4 pounds of lift. Now you go to with the diffuser, we create some downforce. You have 133.2 pounds of lift. Now smooth floor only, we have 92.2 pounds of lift. Now with the diffuser, we actually lost downforce at 101.9. But I'll add a little caveat on this. This was just a diffuser I threw in here as a test feature. If we made tweaks to the diffuser, we could definitely create downforce over the smooth floor only. This does not mean that if you add a diffuser to a smooth floor, you will not increase downforce. That's not true. That is just a caveat I'm going to throw in here just so people aren't confused. Now you can look at the breakdown between the body, the mirrors, the front wheels, the rear wheels, and then the diffuser, and the same thing with the lift. And you can analyze these kind of yourself, but you can see the real important thing is looking at the diffuser by itself. Adding the diffuser, like the actual component itself, adds 6 pounds of drag, but it reduces the overall drag on the car. Now at the smooth underbody, it increases drag by 5.5 pounds, or that's what it's actually seeing on the car, is 5.5 pounds. But you're still getting a decrease in overall drag on the car. And that could be noticed by looking at the actual drag on the body. So you can see how the diffuser affects the body of the vehicle, because the mirrors are pretty similar all the way across the board. The front wheels are very similar. The rear wheels are very similar to each other. So looking at that, you can see how the diffuser affects the rest of the car over here. Now going to lift, we can kind of see the same aspect. So on the body itself, it's actually seeing 130.4, which then goes up to 181 with the diffuser, but the diffuser itself creates 61.1 pounds of downforce. So this still makes an overall decrease in lift, which can be seen here. Now with the smooth underbody, the diffuser actually creates less downforce itself. And then the overall lift is still a little bit higher on the actual body. And that's where this decrease comes from, or this increase comes from here. But again, this is a caveat. That doesn't mean that when you add a diffuser to a flat bottom floor, it's going to increase lift. That's not necessarily true. It can be true, depends on the design of the diffuser. So these numbers could change with a diffuser change. So hopefully you guys found this interesting and you can learn something from it. Thanks for listening. Bye.